Hello and welcome to a very special iteration of our speaker series, where today we're going to be interviewing our director, Mr. James Moschgat, to celebrate almost 19 years as he prepares to depart the NSSI and move on to retirement. So we wanted to take this opportunity to talk with you and learn a little bit about what you've experienced over the past couple decades, which seems wild to say. And see what you've got to pass on to those who you're leaving the NSSI in the capable hands of, hopefully.
Well, thanks for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to it very much. In fact, if I could take you back to when you first joined the NSSI in 2007, can you tell us what initially drew you to the organisation, what challenges you observed, what your initial impressions were, and what goals you had in mind when you first started?
It's a good question. When I was finishing my active duty career, I was the Vice Commandant at Air Command and Staff College, one of our major learning institutions. And as we prepared for retirement, my wife and I looked around for places we thought we'd like to live when we retired. And starting about a year in advance, we went and visited various places, various locations around the United States, and Colorado Springs was one. And about the time I was ready to retire, a job as the deputy at the NSSI came up. And I thought, well, that's a logical transition. We want to live in Colorado Springs. There's a deputy job there, and I've been a deputy, and I have links to Air University. And I think what was important at the time was there was a vision that the NSSI would eventually become part of Air University. So I had that natural link. I had the experience, I had the connections, and so I was very fortunate to get the job.
Lovely. Did you imagine that you would stay this long?
In no way did I ever imagine I would stay this long. But I was interested in stability. But, every time, about the 2 or 3 year point, you start getting that itch. It's time to move. It's time to go somewhere different. But every time that would happen, another challenge would come up. And it just was like, it kept me hooked. There was one challenge after another after another. So I think that's what kept me around for such a long time. That and the people and this incredible mission we have.
How did your role start off, and kind of how were you utilized? How did you see your role as a deputy? And then how did it morph throughout all of these years of your time as a deputy?
That's a good question, Cam. Originally, I was supposed to be the civilian deputy. The civilian would bring continuity to the organization, whereas our commandants would change over time. The civilian would be there to give that continuity. And that's exactly when I moved into the organization. I really operated as the civilian deputy, but over time, each commandant that I've served under had a different view of the way that should work. So under Colonel Bob Gibson, I was actually dual-hatted as the deputy and the director of academic affairs. So I ran the back shop side of the NSSI as well. In various places, I've been involved more in the financial side of the house, working finances for the commandant. But it's changed over time, but primarily always as the continuity, always as the deputy.
The NSSI has evolved a lot over the past couple of decades, and you've been witness to nearly all of those changes. Can you describe how you've seen the NSSI change over that time and what major milestones in particular stand out for you?
The change has been absolutely incredible. And unless you have that tenure here that I've had, it's almost hard to imagine. But when I first arrived at the NSSI, we didn't even have a wiring diagram about how the organization was laid out. We had a very strong leader at that time, and he was very directive in the way, and didn't really thought he needed a diagram. And as a result, people often didn't know who they worked for. So, I mean, one of the first things I did was try to create a wiring diagram so that everybody knew who they reported to. But we're sitting in a library today. This library didn't exist when I first got here. But any institution of higher learning should have a place that people can go to do research and read and think. As I mentioned, it's been one change after another. When I first came to the NSSI, we were in a commercial facility off of I-25 in Woodman. We moved on to Peterson around 2012. And as you both know now, we're in search of a new home because of the officer training course has really taken over the building, and we've got to find ourselves a place to work. As far as lineage, we've gone from working under Air Force Space Command. We went to Air University. Actually, first we went to AFIT. We were under AFIT, then we moved to Air University. We were under the Acre Center for Leadership Development. And eventually we ended up being a Center for Space Excellence at Air University. And then in 2019, the NSSI was the first squadron-sized organization to transfer from the Air Force to the Space Force. I mean, so the changes have just been phenomenal. It's interesting to note, as an institution of higher learning, when I first got here, we used to have these massive debates about how we should develop courses and who we should be catering to. And we debated the need to even have ISD in the process. And now that's just part of who we are. It's become part of our DNA.
Certainly adaptive. Very adaptive
Quite so.
organization.
Well, I would argue the NSSI is a highly credible institution of learning, and it is the center of gravity for space education. How would you see its role going forward? Well, let me ask you this. How has it taught folks? Like, where does it sit within training, education, and what's its role going forward? There's a huge emphasis on training right now, as you said, with the officer training course. Let me play devil's advocate. And why should we have an education arm? Isn't that just teaching people to read books and such?
That is a great question, Cam. I think education is absolutely vital in the profession of arms. Because if we don't constantly study, if we don't analyze the threat, if we don't think about doing things differently, which is really the essence of education, is really challenging people to think differently about the profession of arms and the way we fight, then we are losing a grand opportunity to really prepare our people for the next conflict. And I see that's where the NSSI really comes in. Training is about preparing people to do the known. You respond to stimuli in a certain way. But if all we ever do is respond to every stimuli in the exact same way, when the war starts, they're going to know exactly, our foes will know exactly how we're going to react, and they will have the advantage. So we always we need to think about doing things differently. And to me, that's what the NSSI is here to do, is to challenge people to think differently about the profession of arms and their role in space conflict.
Sure.
Could you build on that a little bit and maybe talk about how the NSSI contributes and has contributed in the past to national security overall?
Absolutely. We really are the only institution in the entire Department of Defense that focuses on continuing education, professional continuing education, not PME, not professional military education, that is controlled under the auspices of the Joint Staff and is executed by each service. This is about preparing space professionals for conflict. So while I like to say PME is it's an inch deep and a mile wide, studying a broad range of topics. Professional continuing education prepares our guardians and space professionals to think a mile deep and an inch wide. So that's how we fit into the overall architecture of education. We really prepare our people to think about their specific role in the profession of arms.
I like that, sir. And so sort of along those lines, so you started off your career, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your active duty background, but my understanding is that you were a fighter pilot.
Guilty?
Guilty? And did most of your career in the air world, and obviously branched into education as well. Compared to when you first came into the service, how has the space domain evolved? And then in your career, how did you see, I won't load the language, did you see an increase in reliance on space from when you first entered the service to when you exited active duty and became the deputy, and since that time to the present when you've come? Like, what are some of the big changes you've seen?
I think the change has been absolutely incredible. Speaking from my experience on the air side, we become just so totally reliant on space. And here's an example. When I was flying in Operation Iraqi Freedom, we were not even allowed to penetrate Iraqi airspace unless we had the highest resolution of GPS. That was a reason to abort the mission, because we were so reliant on the navigation and the precision that it gave our weapons that we weren't going to take that risk. And the other big change, just from the space perspective, is, for decades, we're not even allowed to talk about conflict in space. It was a verboten topic. And now it's out in the open. We know that we will be challenged in space. And that's how we have to evolve. And I think that changes the whole culture of the way Guardians have grown up. For such a long time, space was a strategic asset. It was never challenged. America had dominance. And because it had dominance and we were never challenged, we could always take more time to do things. We could always wait to make a decision until later because there was always time to make that perfect decision. But now, as we become more challenged in space on a daily basis, we're going to need to empower people to make timely, rapid, smart decisions to get things done, or we're going to find ourselves at a disadvantage.
I'd like to just pick on something you said. You mentioned culture, which has been a really big topic for Space Force as it's come into inception and grown and developed over the last 5 years. What are your thoughts on Space Force culture, and how did the other services influence that potentially?
Well, I think one of the best things we did as a Space Force was we brought in ISTs, inter-service transfers from other organizations, the Navy, the Army. And I think that helps with the culture. It helps to bring in a warfighting mindset. And I think that is one of the changes, is that now we're challenged in space. We have to have a warfighting mindset. And that's something we haven't had because we haven't had to have that mindset. And Ram, you probably know that culture is one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and I hope that we influence here at the NSSI. We always, I kind of laugh because we always think of culture as something we're going to develop at some point. I would argue that there is a culture today in the Space Force. Is it the culture we want? And if it's not, we have to influence it. Culture will develop whether you do something or not. My biggest concern from a cultural standpoint is how Guardians will fit into the joint culture. Because there are certain things that joint-mindedness values. They value sacrifice. They value dedication. They value perseverance. And we need to be able to walk into a room full of operators from whatever service and tell them exactly how we're going to help win that fight. And if we can't do that, then we've lost.
Sir, and so along those lines, some folks don't know, but the NSSI supports United States Space Command just as much as it supports the service provider, right? United States Space Force.
Yeah.
How do you see that relationship evolving over the, because folks maybe are not aware, but we even support, with the number of courses, we support more U.S. Spacecom than we do the service. Do you see that evolving in the future? How do you see that going?
Yes, I absolutely. Well, first of all, I see that evolving. I always see the demand for more courses. As you both know, we have more courses waiting in the wings now. And if U.S. Space Command needs a new course, we'll develop it. We also do a course for the Navy. And so the Navy realized that we were the center of excellence for space education. They knew they didn't have the expertise and the people to put on their own course, and they came to us with the resources. And our maritime space course is one of the most popular courses we have. So I think that is the genius of the NSSI in a way. From the very outset, the NSSI was never intended to be that school that catered only to the Air Force and now the Space Force. It has been the course that all the other services come to. As you both know, we recently put on courses for staffers from Capitol Hill. So we're educating civilians and others from other agencies, and now 62 international partners. So I'm just telling you, I think we will continue to be the center of excellence. We will be the source of space knowledge for our allies around the globe and, of course, here at home.
Our different customers, I think, is very reflective of the importance of the NSSI's mission and its criticality to warfighting, but also that step change of how warfighting's evolved, that it's no longer just the terrestrial services, but it's space as well. In my short time of being here, the number of courses has grown exponentially, as well as our international partners, as well as that joint integration. What does that tell you about 18, 19 years ago, when it was maybe 3 courses at no fawn, to where we are today? Do you see that? Do you see dilution, or do you think that this is us creating a stronger coalition?
I think it's absolutely creating a stronger coalition. And I think the essence of this change that we see is the fact that when the United States decided to create a space force, it really caused the rest of our allies to wake up. And it's not, Ram, as you know, the Brits have been with us all along the way, and many other nations as well. But I think it really clicked at that point that we really, if we're going to win a conflict, we need to be engaged in space. We need to have that knowledge. We need to have those capabilities. And, the United States doesn't have all the capabilities it needs either. And that's one of the reasons that our partnerships are so important, because those partnerships bring different capabilities together to form a whole. And I think that's absolutely incredible. So 62 international partners at this point, all our other DoD services. It'll be interesting to see where we go next. I predict the biggest area of growth is going to be on the international side. I think, of course, to go back to your question, Cam, we will always have interest from our other partners, our DoD partners. But I think the international side of it is where we'll see growth.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I agree.
And we want our partners to be coming to us, right, to be
That's
educated
right.
about space.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of the United States Space Force. I always talk about this, and I just say that, hey, if it's a maritime thing, the Navy says follow us. We'll have the lead. If it's a land-based concept, the Army always says follow us. We'll take the lead. And I believe the Space Force should erect a big tent and say space is our domain. We are the experts. Follow us. You're welcome into the tent, and we're going to lead you into the future.
So kind of along a more nostalgic line, sir. So the Naval Academy has a tradition when they graduate, the lower 3 classes say, 3 cheers for those who are going forward. And then all the firsties that graduated, new ensigns and second lieutenants say 3 cheers for those we leave behind us. So what advice would you give for those you leave behind you at the NSSI, which you have derived from these years of experience?
I think my biggest bit of advice is don't fear change. If there is one constant, it is change. And in my entire tenure here at the NSSI, it's been nothing but change. It's been moving facilities and moving organizations and taking on new courses. I think it's interesting to remember back to 2019 when we found out that we were supposed to open up Space 200 to our Five Eye partners. That was a comment that the SecF made at the Space Symposium, and that's the first time we heard about it. And within months, we had Five Eye partners in Space 200. So, don't fear change. Think of it as an opportunity and attack it. And I'll tell you, our nation relies on educated, space-minded guardians that are warfighters, and we have the opportunity to influence those people here, not just guardians, but all. I would challenge you that I think probably every future Chief of Space Operations and every future Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force will find his or her way through the NSSI at some point. So again, our chance to influence the future. So don't fear change. Take it as an opportunity and move forward.
Do you think kind of along what you said, do you think what makes the NSSI so unique is that it's one of the only places, if not, and I'd probably argue the only place that does it like this, where guardians and foreign partners, international partners, and sister services can all be together in the same room talking space warfighting? I'm not aware of any other institution that does what we do in that way.
I agree with you 100%. I also believe that's true. And when you think about it, how are we going to fight? We're going to fight shoulder to shoulder with others. It's not just officers fighting. It's not just enlisted fighting. It's not just the U.S. Space Force fighting. It's our coalition partners. It's our joint partners. And we're going to do it shoulder to shoulder with officers, enlisted, and civilians. We're such a small force. We cannot afford to have any slackers, if you want to say that. Everybody's got to be firing on all 8 cylinders all the time. And I think this is where we do it. Space 200 and 300 are prime examples of that. It is one of the things our students constantly remind us of. It is the only time they get together and learn from one another. They learn as much from one another as they do from our instructors. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to do that. So while we might train in a stovepipe manner, officer training course, eventually those officers are going to have to come together with the enlisted side and their DoD partners and just really learn what they do. I'll add one other thing, and I think this is important, that because of the way we operate in space, we tend to do it from home station. We tend to do it behind a computer screen, which is totally the opposite of the way that most operators do business. When I was a young pup flying airplanes, I'd go to Nellis and go to Red Flag, Green Flag, go to Cope Thunder in the Philippines. Cope North, different exercises. And when I wasn't flying my airplane, I would jump on another airplane. I'd fly on AWACS, so I got to ride in the B-52. And I learned what all these other people did and what they brought to the fight through hands-on experience. And our space operators don't get that opportunity unless they come to Space 200 and 300 and they get that opportunity to learn. So a missile launch guy can learn from a GPS expert, can learn from a missile defense person and get to learn what they do. An officer can talk to civilians and learn about the civilians' challenges. And an NCO can talk to an officer and find out what their challenges are. And through that, in that way, we learn from one another. And I think that's incredibly powerful, incredibly important.
That's what I hear you saying, sir, is that breadth is an important qualifier. So you can be an expert on GPS, and we should have people who are experts. However, that's not enough. It's necessary, but not sufficient.
When you're a guardian, you're expected at a certain level as you grow up, you're expected at a certain level to be the space expert. It's not enough just to be the GPS guy. You've got to know space, and you got to be able to represent space in that joint community.
Yes, sir.
I think it's one of the beauties of our instructor cadre as well, because in the courses where we might not have that same breadth and mix of students, we try to bring it with the folk who are teaching, who are actually doing the education, because we have such a broad array of different services, different backgrounds, and different experiences within our instructor staff. And I think that's, again, a little bit like this. It's very unique to where we are. So how have you seen that evolve over time? Because I can imagine with the changes and the growth of space, we're not just having the GPS guy, like you say. We've now got someone who might be a GPS specialist, who's got a different service background, who's worked in industry, who's now teaching our young and our older warfighters to go out and win.
Well, I think that's one of the real, it's almost like one of the jewels in our crown at the NSSI has been our instructors. Our contract instructors do 95% of the instruction. They do about 100% of the back shop work, registration, the library, and so on. And, for the most part, they're all retired military. They get it. They understand it. They've had 20, 30 years of experience and seasoning, and they bring that to the classroom. And one of the things I know for certain is that every one of our instructors could make more money if they were out working for a contractor somewhere and employing their skills with that contractor. But they love being here because they love building the force of tomorrow. They love putting their imprint on these guardians and our allies that are going to be going into the fight in the future. And so, I don't think you can even compare our faculty to any place else on the globe, any other school. They're just so passionate, so engaged in what they do, and they love being here, and they love working with our students.
It's the force of today as well with some of our more recent courses, because we're doing some of the pre-deployment training, which is very new. It's almost like a shift in our mission somewhat,
Right.
but it's critical.
I think we are going to see over time, just due to shifting requirements, the NSSI will take on perhaps a little bit more of a training flavor. Our primary mission will still be education, but some of these pre-deployment courses are, for the most part, training, leavened with a little bit of education. So, but again, we're going to change to roll with the punches, and we're going to get the job done for our customers.
And that's one of the neat things I think about. I'd like to hear your thoughts, sir, about there are many schoolhouses across the DoD that are primarily manned and executed by military instructors. The NSSI hasn't done things that way. We have a small government cadre that oversees, as Ram said, a large cadre of contracted instructors. What's the benefits that you've seen over the years, being able to potentially move, I won't put words in your mouth, but agility potentially that comes with that?
Well, our contractors always lean forward. I must say that during my time here, I've never worked with a better group of contractors, and we've had a number of contractors work for us. But they do bring that experience. They do bring that passion. They do bring that dedication. One of the things I think I'm most proud of, and I tell a lot of people this, that if I made everybody at the NSSI, government, contractor, if I said, come to work in civilian clothes, I would challenge anybody, except perhaps for some hair length and things like that. I would say, show me who the government people are and show me who the contractors are. And I think you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference, because they all seek excellence. They all are dedicated to the mission. They are dedicated to our students. And I never, ever hear the words, we can't do that. Because if we want it and we can get the resources, and sometimes even if the resources are kind of scarce, we still get it done because we know where we need to go for our students and for our customers.
Really professional, credible group of folks.
They are,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sure.
I'd like to hear your reflections on the leadership style you've chosen to take, because you are culminating here as our director, and you are at our helm. So what influenced your decision on how you were going to lead the NSSI, and did you have any mentors along the way that have shaped that?
Let me talk about the mentor part first. I have never had traditionally what you'd call a mentor, but I watch different people and I watch how they lead, and I try to take the best of what they do, but I also learn from the mistakes they made. But we've had some great commandants here, guys that are still my friends and will be my friends for life. And they, I kind of have been able to stand on their shoulders. But I'll tell you a humorous story. When I first got to the NSSI, of course, I came from the fighter pilot community. We're pretty tough on one another, and we don't mince a lot of words because if communication isn't clear, if decisions aren't made in a timely fashion, people die, metal gets bent, airplanes crash. Okay. So that was the 30 years I grew up in that environment. So I got to the NSSI and got to know everybody. And about the first week I was here, I had somebody come knock on my door and they said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Sure, come on in." Can I close the door? Okay, not a good sign. Week one, somebody wants to close the door already. And they said, so I closed the door and I said, "Yeah, what's on your mind?" They said, "Just got to ask you, why are you mad at everybody?" And I said, "I'm not mad at anybody." And they said, "Well, you act like you are." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And give me an example. He says, "Well, out in the hall, you just walked by somebody and you stopped them and you started talking to them and you said, 'Hey, we need to do this.'" And he said, "That's just not the way we do business. This is, but it's the way I grew up. If you had something that needed to get done, you grabbed somebody and you told them right away." But I came across in that cultural shift, not understanding what the space culture was like initially. And it was like, they just weren't used to being blunt and direct. You had to maybe soft sell it a little bit more. So that's something I learned early on. But also one of the things I think are important to me is I'm a big believer in being a servant leader. Uh, your people are going to do amazing things. You guys do amazing things. Our contractors do amazing things. And they do it because you empower them to do it. You give them the resources and the guidance, and then you let them do their job. Big believer in Patton's quote, don't tell people how to do something. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. So I've been a big believer in servant leadership. Let me give you the resources you need. Let me protect you from distractions that are going to take away from the mission. And the other thing I'd say I really brought, and it's something I learned over my time in the active duty force, one of the best things I think we ever did was focus on customers during our quality periods. We went through TQM and all those things. And I think the one thing that should survive through all that, even though TQM has gone by the wayside in many ways, is a focus on customers. We all have customers. And if we can help our customers get to yes, get what they need, and direct them and push them in the right direction and help them achieve their goals, then we're doing the right thing. And I think of the NSSI as a school. We're a factory. We produce graduates for the force. We produce graduates with the capability to do amazing things. And again, so we just have to have our finger on the pulse and know what our customers need. We need to help them figure out what they need in some cases, and then we need to get after it. So being a servant leader, I think, is important. Customer focus, I think, is important. And of course, everybody has their own leadership style. So somebody asked me the other day, what's it been like being the leader of the NSSI? And I said, it's been one of the easiest jobs I've ever had. You just set the boundaries out there. You let people know what you expect. You give them some marching orders and, make it moral, ethical, and legal, and let them go do the business. And if they make a mistake, you don't shoot them for it. You don't shoot people that make mistakes. So, I don't know, long answer to a short
It
question.
was a great
Great
answer.
question. What kind of challenges do you see coming down the pike, sir? So I'll set you up. the NSSI has weathered a lot of change, as you have said, and come out stronger every time. And I think we're in another era of change where we're going to come out the other side potentially unrecognizable, and in a good sense, stronger and better and different than anyone had ever imagined, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years. What are some of the biggest hurdles you see that we're going to need to watch out for?
Well, I think that's a good question, Cam. I think we're going to need to continue to work on the culture piece. We're going to have to do what we can to make our students and then our graduates focus on culture, because we're going to have to adopt a warfighting mindset. This can't be a 9-to-5 job. If we lose in space, we're hurting, and we know that. So I think we're going to have to work hard on the cultural piece. Where I see us going on in the future is another challenge, I think, for the NSSI, is that many of our international partners want to create their own version of the NSSI, and they're going to look to us for help. Now, there are going to be some challenges with that, but I think we're going to be well postured to help. But setting up space centers of excellence in Latin America and Europe and Asia, I think a lot of our international partners will look to us for help. They'll look to the Space Force for help with that. Again, the growth, there is no end, in my view, to education growth in the space field. And whether that's from U.S. Space Command or our international partners. And to that end, we've always got to have more classroom space. And right now, we're about the limit of our capacity. So we're going to have to continue to work that piece. And I think that's what we're going to have to continue to focus on. I think those are 3 big things I think we're going to have to work on.
Can I ask what you're most proud of? And is there anything you would have done differently?
What I am most proud of, I almost don't like to focus on me. But one of the things I am proud of was our space professional reading list that we've done every year. That was just an idea I came up with. I think it was back when Bob Gibson was the commandant, and we came up with that. And I forget which year we're in now. Somebody yell over my shoulder real quick and tell me what year.
I think
Is it 15?
16.
16th year of the Space Pro reading list. And then on top of the Space Pro reading list, we've invited the authors to come speak as part of our professional development for our faculty and the space professionals in the local community. And then we've done these fireside chats. And so those are enduring as well. I think I'm really proud of that, because one of our things is we're supposed to inspire guardians to continue their lifelong learning. And the professional reading list does exactly that. It challenges people to pick up a book and just read, and then get together with their peers and maybe their superiors and talk about what they can do differently. So very proud of that. But, mostly I'm proud of the people. I'm really proud of this team. It's such an incredible, passionate group of educators who are so dedicated to the NSSI, to the Space Force, and to all of our customers. I just can't say enough about them. They're just incredible people.
I have to say, I love the reading list as well. And before I even arrived at the NSSI, that was one of the things that I was aware of and have regularly talked about with my peers, with my colleagues, and British colleagues, as well as US colleagues and other international friends around the bazaars. I've definitely found texts and thoughts that I would have not known about or considered. So from me personally, definitely a very big thank you for that, because I think it's, as you say, such a useful tool for sparking that thought and that conversation, which then goes on to shape people's approach to what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what they're going to do it with. I think it's very influential and a real wonderful legacy to have.
Right. Well, thank you.
We've seen proof of that when we post about the Space Pro reading list on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube. It's by far the most engagement. People want to see that.
I love the speaker series as well. I love getting to talk to
Quite
these
so, yeah.
amazing authors.
We have them queued up this year. So
I'm excited. I'm really happy.
It's going to be in.
I would like to know some of your most memorable moments that you've encountered over the last 19 years. We've gone from quite a small niche organization to one that is at the heart of warfighting, obviously space warfighting, but we know it infiltrates into all of our services. What really stands out for you, good, bad, or amusing, over your tenure?
it's a lot of years to think about. I think that just the thing that stands out to me is the amount of change we've gone through. Again, if you had looked at the NSSI back in 2007, 2004, when it first originated, you would not recognize it for what we have today. It was the seed that grew into what we have today, and it's just been a continuous quest for perfection. We're never going to get there. We're never going to be perfect. Our courses will never be perfect. We'll always have a student that will be unhappy, but we will make them better for every student that comes behind based on that feedback. And so what I really think about is throughout my tenure has just been how we have taken on every challenge, whether it's moving from a building, replacing entire IT suites because of challenges of having to go from different organizations to another. And some that didn't really even appreciate what we did. They just knew it was important. But we've adapted at every turn, and we have made ourselves better. We have made ourselves better adult educators. And I think the institution is so much better today. It's head and shoulders above what it was when I first got here. And I think I'm going to see us continue to grow like that, because I guess my challenge to you all who will be here after I leave, and for all that would follow me, is just, again, don't be afraid of that change. Make this organization better. If you can make it 0.1% better every day, then you will consider that a success, because in 10 years, you're going to be that much better. You're going to be that much more capable, and we're going to create a force that's that much more lethal.
Marginal gains.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sir, I'd like to kind of, with a parting shot, sort of ask you, where does NSSI sit as far as preparing our folks for the next fight? We've talked a lot about what the NSSI does, culture. Exactly where does it fit, do you think? And the need is great from what you've said. So where do we go?
Well, I think we play a vital role in preparing Guardians, both Space Force, DoD Joint, and Coalition for any future fight. And not long ago, we had a senior Guardian state quite simply that if we go to war in the near future, we're going to go to war with the equipment we have on hand today. So stop asking for new things and figure out how to optimize the equipment you have today. And I absolutely agree with that. My corollary to that is, if we go to war in the near future, we're going to go to war with the people we have on hand today. So how do we optimize that resource to be victorious? You do that really in 3 ways. You give that person experience, and experience is the one that takes a long time. It takes a long time to grow a superstar. You also do it through training, and I think we have a pretty good handle on training. Training is, again, preparing somebody to do something that is known, to operate their equipment. But if all we ever do is operate what we have today the way we've always done it, then we're going to be at a disadvantage if we ever go to conflict. And to me, that's where NSSI and education comes in. Education is preparing people for the unknown, to challenge the way they think, to challenge the way they use their equipment, to outthink the enemy, to get inside the enemy's decision loop. And that's where I think the NSSI is critically important. And it already exists. We teach 24 courses today. Some of them are only 2 days long. Some of them are 3 weeks long. It's an easy investment to send somebody to an education course and challenge them to think differently about a mission, about the equipment they have, about the enemy, and about the way we're going to fight. So I would just say, if we go to conflict in the near future, the NSSI is going to play a vital role. And I think it is the cheapest, easiest, most overlooked of those 3 aspects to prepare somebody for combat. Education to me is absolutely vital.
Sounds like a small investment and a huge gain.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us today and share some of your experience and knowledge that you've gained over the last 2 decades, being probably the lifeblood of the NSSI.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there will be somebody coming behind that can easily fill those shoes, and I am absolutely confident about that.